Well, my name is Terry Rogers. I should be retired, but I'm not. I'm a physician and have done a number of things in my professional life. Currently, and for the past almost 20 years, I've been a medical director for a large drug and alcohol treatment program. My training in medicine is in pulmonary and critical care medicine, and I ran respiratory and critical care at Swedish Hospital in downtown Seattle for 15 years, starting in 1975 to 1990. At that point, I was recruited to go work for our local Blue Shield insurance company. I was first their senior medical director and then chief operating officer. Left there after about 8 years and subsequently have done a couple of things, one of which actually was the first medical director for the Seattle area Providence Elder Place. When it started, we were about 130 participants. It's now up to over 600. And then for about 10 years, I was CEO of the Foundation for Healthcare Quality, which is a nonprofit looking at quality, cost, and outcome measures in the state of Washington.
But can I say wow now and get it over with?
Yeah, it is what it is.
Well, it certainly is a very impressive resume.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that our listeners might not know is, your arts activities as well.
As it turns out, in college, knowing that I was headed to medical school, I kind of balked at the idea of majoring in a science because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of science. So I was actually a fine arts major. That's my degree is in fine arts. I actually have almost no fine arts talent with respect to a paintbrush or a pencil, but it did give me the opportunity to learn sort of the environment, if you will, and as long as I took my science prerequisites, it worked fine for getting me into medical school. From a performance standpoint, I've always been involved in music, both playing and singing. I'm a saxophone player. I lead a traditional Dixieland jazz band. We have been in continuous organization for 35 years.
You said that one of the topics you wanted to talk about as well was how your interest in pursuit of medicine has sort of shaped the way your life has gone.
I grew up sort of in this engineering track family. My brother Dick went to engineering school, Stevens Tech in Hoboken. I was active in the Boy Scouts when I was a youngster. Went on to actually attain Eagle Scout status. And the summer between my junior and senior years, I was chosen to go to a kind of a sponsored 6-week trip of Europe. And one of the counselors there was a fellow who actually was in the middle of medical school. And we got to be quite friendly. And I saw what he was doing and who he was and what the possibilities were, and decided at that point that that's when I wanted to go into medicine. I wasn't an ideal medical school candidate, as it turns out. The first couple of years were a struggle for me, but once I hit the clinical years, the junior year, seeing patients, it all turned around and settled in with me and let me know that indeed this was the place where I should be. A number of things happened. Training is an interesting journey. When I say training, I mean starting with an internship, which is what we called it in those days, and then a residency program. And I went on to do a fellowship in lung disease and critical care medicine. There's a reason why they call it the practice of medicine. And I can sit here and tell you of at least 3 or 4 instances where I made the wrong choice. The stark truth of the matter is that you learn as much, if not more, from those instances. One incident in particular comes to mind. Unfortunately, it did not cause permanent damage. I interned at a hospital called Presbyterian Hospital in Philadelphia. It's a relatively small hospital, probably 200 or 250 beds, but was the 3rd busiest emergency room in the city of Philadelphia. We just were in a very interesting area and got all kinds of things. At that point in time, and it wouldn't be this way now, we worked 24 hours on, 24 hours off. And there was no one else there. It was me. It was an intern. It's like, oh, what? So one Friday evening, a woman came in who had actually been in a motor vehicle pedestrian incident, and she had been struck by the bumper of a car in a crosswalk. Brought to the hospital, and I took her history and examined her and said, I really think it's just a bruise. She walked in and whatever. And she agreed to that, and she and her husband went home. They called later that evening and said, the leg is swollen, it's hurting more. We were just really busy. I was up to my ears and gave some probably inappropriate, curt answer, but they came back. They had to actually wait another 4 hours to get an x-ray. And of course, you know how this story is going to end. As it turns out, her leg was broken. And of course, I apologized profusely to them. As it turns out, humble pie is the most nutritious form of sustenance when you're learning this craft. I know that we're getting near the end of our time, Mary, and I thought the other thing that I just talk a little bit about is photography. Didn't get serious about photography until about 10 years ago. I said I was remarried. Karen and I had 2 children, a daughter who is a nurse in the LA area, and a son, Luke, who was a very gifted artist. He was a very good photographer. I bought him a nice camera when he was in high school, at the end of his high school. We lost Luke in a boating accident when he was a sophomore in college. And I inherited his camera. Luke had all kinds of skills. He was just a wonderful young man. But one of the things he could do, and I didn't really learn about it in depth until after he was gone, he had this wonderful capacity to connect with people, getting folks together. He didn't have a judgmental bone in his body. He didn't get that from his father. So I started taking pictures again, in part, I suspect, because he couldn't, I don't know, I just did. And when I started doing portraits and I can remember the moment, I can remember the picture, it just clicked in place and said, Terry, that's what you have to do. So that's what happens. And for me, it is just, people said, well, do what you're passionate about. And I said, well, yeah, I'm passionate about Carmel Sundays. But I don't need Carmel Sundays. I need to take people's pictures. That's the difference.